I devoted my entire life to my daughter. After my husband passed away, I worked night shifts in a nursing home, saved every cent, and built her future with my own hands. I used to believe that love never goes unanswered, that one day, all the sleepless nights and sacrifices would come back to me as pride, not pain. But I was wrong. I learned the truth the day I saw my daughter's wedding photos online. Smiling in a white dress, beside a man I had never met, on a day I was never invited to. My name is Helen Grant, and I'm 55 years old. I live in a quiet town in Virginia, where every house looks peaceful from the outside but carries its own stories inside. Mine begins with love, deep, honest love, and ends with something I never thought I'd feel for my only child, heartbreak. Years ago, my life looked ordinary, even happy. My husband, Robert Grant, was a mechanic, the kind of man who worked with his hands and laughed with his whole heart. We didn't have much, but what we had was enough. Our home was small, but filled with laughter, warmth, and the smell of Robert's Sunday pancakes. Our daughter, Emma, was only 8 when everything changed. It was a rainy afternoon. Robert had gone out to buy groceries. I still remember the faint sound of rain hitting the kitchen window when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm, too calm. "Mrs. Grant, there's been an accident." Those words froze me where I stood. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out, and the phone slipped from my hand. Robert was gone. Just like that. One second he was buying milk for Emma, and the next, I was identifying his body at the hospital morgue. I stood beside that cold table, unable to cry, unable to move. I kept thinking, he was just here. That night, Emma asked me, "Mom, when is Daddy coming home?" I held her in my arms and whispered, "He's watching over us now." She cried herself to sleep while I sat in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd ever keep my promise to protect her. The days that followed were heavy, heavy with silence, heavy with bills, heavy with loneliness. Friends came by for the funeral, brought food, hugged me, said they'd check in. But grief makes people uncomfortable, and eventually they stopped coming. It was just me and my little girl in a house that felt too big without his voice in it. That's when I found a job at a nursing home, working night shifts. It wasn't glamorous. The smell of disinfectant clung to my clothes, my hands were always dry from sanitizer, and my back ached from lifting patients. I would put Emma to bed every night, kiss her forehead and whisper, "I'll be home before you wake up." Then I'd take the bus to the nursing home, my reflection in the window barely recognizable. Those nights were long. There were moments when exhaustion made me cry silently in the staff room. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd close my eyes and see Emma's face. That little smile was enough to keep me standing. In the mornings, I'd come home, make her breakfast, and pretend I wasn't tired. She'd talk about school, her friends, her dreams. She wanted to become a doctor one day. "I'll buy you a big house, Mom," she'd say, "so you never have to work again." I'd smile and tell her, "Seeing you happy is the only home I'll ever need." Years went by in that rhythm: work, sleep, love, repeat. The walls of our home held my fatigue and her laughter together. On weekends, we'd bake cookies, even if we couldn't afford fancy ingredients. On Christmas, I'd wrap her gifts with old newspaper because ribbons cost too much. But she never complained. She'd hug me tight and whisper, "You're the best mom ever." And I believed her. When she grew older, she became everything I ever dreamed of: smart, determined, compassionate. I remember standing at her high school graduation, clapping so hard my hands hurt. Robert would have been proud, I thought. That night Emma said, "Mom, I'll make you proud. Just wait and see." I didn't know then that waiting would become my entire life. Waiting for her calls, waiting for her visits, waiting for her to remember that I was still here. I worked 2 jobs to support her through medical school, day shifts at a clinic, night shifts at the nursing home. I didn't have vacations, new clothes, or friends left to talk to. But I didn't mind. Emma was my reason for everything. Even now when I close my eyes, I can still see those years so clearly. The smell of antiseptic, the creak of my old shoes on the hospital floor, the taste of instant coffee keeping me awake while the world slept. I told myself that one day, when Emma became a doctor, I'd finally rest. I'd sit on the porch, drink tea, and watch her drive home in her white coat. Back then, I truly believed that love, pure, selfless love, could never break you. I didn't know that it could. When Emma left for college, I stood at the bus station waving until her silhouette disappeared into the distance. She had packed her bags with books, dreams, and that bright smile that always reminded me of her father. The moment the bus turned the corner, the silence hit me like a cold wind. My baby was gone. Off to chase a future that I had spent my entire life building for her. The house felt empty without her. The small apartment that once echoed with her laughter now carried only the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the old wall clock. I'd catch myself cooking too much food, folding laundry that wasn't there, or setting 2 cups of tea out of habit. There were nights when I'd sit by the window just to see the lights of passing buses, wondering if she was warm, if she was eating, if she still thought about me. She called every few days at first, her voice full of excitement. "Mom, classes are amazing. The professors are tough, but I love it here." I'd listen quietly, smiling even though tears filled my eyes. I was proud, so proud. I'd tell her, "Don't worry about money, sweetheart. Just focus on your studies." She didn't know that I had started taking double night shifts at the nursing home to pay her rent and books. Those years turned me into a machine that ran on caffeine and love. I'd wake up, go to work, come home, sleep 2 hours, and go back again. Every payday, I'd send Emma a few $100s, sometimes skipping my own bills to make sure she had enough. My co-workers would joke, "Helen, you're the hardest working mom in Virginia." I'd laugh, but deep down I knew it wasn't strength, it was fear. The fear of failing her, of letting her down. When she came home for Christmas during her first year, I almost didn't recognize her. She had cut her hair short, started wearing fancy clothes, and spoke with a new kind of confidence, the kind that comes from living in a bigger world. She kissed my cheek quickly and said, "Mom, don't worry, I brought you something." She handed me a scarf, soft and expensive. I held it close and smiled, "It's beautiful." But when I tried to hug her, she pulled away slightly, saying, "Ugh, Mom, I smell like the bus. Let me shower first." It was such a small moment, but it lingered. I stood there, scarf in hand, realizing that she was slowly stepping into a world where I didn't belong. As the years passed, our conversations grew shorter. She got busier. "Mom, I'll call you later, okay?" became her favorite sentence. Sometimes later turned into weeks. I'd sit by the phone after my shifts, sipping cold coffee, staring at the old family photo on the shelf, the 3 of us smiling in a park, before life had taken everything away. Still, I never complained. I wanted her to have everything: success, security, happiness, even if that meant I had to fade quietly into the background. During her final year of medical school, Emma called with excitement. "Mom, I met someone." Her voice was soft, careful. "He's a doctor too. His name is Andrew Miller. He's from Richmond. You'd like him, he's kind and smart." I smiled through the phone, though a strange heaviness settled in my chest. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm happy for you." But something in her tone told me she wasn't ready to let me in completely. When I asked, "So, when do I get to meet him?" she laughed nervously. "Soon, Mom. He's really busy right now, and well, we're just figuring things out." Weeks turned into months. She rarely mentioned him again. I tried not to pry, but every time she visited, there was a new piece of jewelry on her wrist, a designer bag, or a perfume I could never afford. Her world was changing, growing brighter and more glamorous, while mine stayed the same. Then, one evening, after another long shift, I got a text from her. "Mom, I might not come home this summer. Things are really hectic at work." That single message pierced me in a way I didn't expect. I sat on my bed, staring at it, wondering how it had come to this. My daughter too busy to come home to the woman who raised her. Still, I sent a reply, "It's okay, honey. I understand. I love you." That was always my response, no matter what she said. "I love you." Because that was the only thing I had left to give. But deep inside I could feel a shift, something subtle, something I couldn't name. The girl who once clung to me in thunderstorms now spoke to me like I was a duty, not a mother. And yet, even then, I told myself it was just part of growing up. Every child pulls away eventually. I believed she'd come back, that once she settled, once she realized how much I had given up, she'd look at me again the way she used to. I didn't know that the distance between us wasn't temporary. It was the beginning of something permanent, something that would soon tear my heart apart. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that usually starts with soft light coming through the kitchen window and the smell of coffee filling the room. I had just returned home after a long night shift at the nursing home. My body ached, but I was used to it. Exhaustion had become an old friend. I set my cup on the counter, reached for my phone to check the time, and that's when I saw it. A notification from Instagram. It read, "At Emma Miller, just married ring sparkles. For a moment, my mind refused to process it. I blinked, thinking it must be a mistake. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe it was another Emma. But then I tapped on the post, and my heart stopped. There she was. My daughter. In a white gown, smiling like the sun itself. Her hand rested on the arm of a man I'd only heard about. Andrew Miller. The caption read, "Best day of my life. Thank you to everyone who made it special." Everyone. Everyone, except me. My breath caught in my throat. The room started spinning. I set my coffee down, but it slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. I didn't even flinch at the sound. I just stood there, staring at that picture, my fingers trembling, the light from the phone screen reflecting off the tears that had started falling before I even knew it. She got married. My Emma. And I hadn't even known. I scrolled through the photos like someone walking through fire. There she was, cutting the cake, dancing, smiling beside her new in-laws. Dozens of people had commented, "Congratulations, Dr. Miller. And you make a beautiful couple." Each word felt like a knife. I fell to my knees. The sound of the broken coffee mug still echoed in my ears. My chest hurt, my breath came shallow, and for a moment, I thought I might faint. I whispered her name again and again, like maybe it would pull her back to me. Emma. Emma, why? I thought about all the nights I had worked to pay for her college tuition. The lunches I had skipped so she could have new textbooks. The Christmases I had spent alone so she could celebrate with her classmates. Every sacrifice I'd made, every part of myself I'd given, and she hadn't even told me. That wasn't just a wedding photo. That was a wall between us, a lifetime of love erased with one caption. I sat on the cold kitchen floor, the smell of spilled coffee in the air, scrolling through picture after picture. My baby girl was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Her smile was wider, but her eyes looked different. The innocent girl who once held my hand during thunderstorms had vanished. My mind wandered to the day she had left for college. I remembered the promise she made, her arms around me as she said, "You'll always be my best friend, Mom." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what changed. But there was no one to answer me, just the hollow sound of my own breathing. Hours passed. I didn't even notice that the sun had moved across the sky. My phone slipped from my fingers, the screen going black. I sat there in silence, feeling something inside me collapse. Not just my heart, but my faith in everything I had believed about love and family. I kept replaying one thought: how could she not want me there? I would have stood in the back of the room quietly. I wouldn't have interfered. I would have smiled, clapped, cried happy tears. I would have brought her favorite lilies. I would have given her the same blessing I gave her on every birthday: "May you never forget where love began." But maybe she had forgotten. Maybe she had outgrown the kind of love that didn't wear expensive clothes or live in big houses. That night, I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat at the kitchen table, holding my wedding ring in one hand and my phone in the other. I thought about Robert, how proud he would have been to walk Emma down the aisle. Then I thought about how he must be looking down now, wondering how our little girl could leave her mother standing outside the story of her own life. By the time dawn came, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to call. I wasn't going to text. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I had spent my entire life giving without being asked. This time, I wanted her to feel my absence. But as the next few days passed, the silence only hurt more. The walls of my house seemed to whisper her name. Every shadow reminded me of her. So I told myself that maybe she hadn't meant to hurt me. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe, Just maybe, she would be happy to see me if I showed up and congratulated her in person. I convinced myself that love couldn't disappear that easily. That she was still my Emma somewhere under that white dress and new last name. So I wrapped a gift, a small photo frame with a picture of her as a child sitting on Robert's shoulders, both of them laughing under the summer sun. I wrote a little note, "For the new chapter of your life. From Mom, with love." And with trembling hands, I put on my best dress, brushed my hair, and prepared to meet my daughter, the bride I never knew. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. My hands trembled as I wrapped the small gift I had prepared, a framed picture of Emma sitting on Robert's shoulders, both of them laughing under the golden summer light. I tied it with a simple white ribbon, the same ribbon I had once used to tie her pigtails when she was a little girl. I kept telling myself I wasn't going there to demand answers. I just wanted to see her, to tell her I was happy for her, even if she hadn't thought of me. A mother's heart doesn't need an invitation. By noon, I found myself standing outside a grand two-story house in a wealthy Virginia suburb. The lawn was freshly trimmed, the driveway lined with polished cars, and a large welcome home banner still hung above the door. I clutched the photo frame close to my chest, my pulse racing as I pressed the doorbell. A woman in her 60s opened the door, elegant, perfectly dressed, and smiling in that polite, distant way that rich people do when they don't recognize you. "Yes," she said. "Hi," I replied softly, my voice almost shaking. I'm here to see Emma." She tilted her head, confused. "I'm sorry, dear. Do you mean Dr. Miller?" "Yes," I said, smiling nervously. "Emma Grant, my daughter." The woman's expression flickered. She turned her head slightly and called into the house, "Andrew. There's someone here asking for Emma." A tall man appeared, handsome, sharp suit, and a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked at me like I was an inconvenience. "Can I help you?" he asked. Before I could answer, a voice came from the hallway. "Who is it?" And then I saw her. Emma. She looked radiant in a light blue dress, her hair styled neatly, her face glowing with that effortless beauty that only happiness can bring. For a moment, I forgot everything. My heart swelled. I smiled and whispered, "Sweetheart." But her expression changed the instant our eyes met. Surprise. Then discomfort. Then something worse, fear. Andrew looked at her and asked, "Do you know this woman?" Emma froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "Honey." Andrew prompted again, this time with a slight edge in his tone. And that's when she said it. I don't know her," she stammered. "Maybe she's someone from the nursing home where I used to volunteer." The words hit me like a punch to the chest. I blinked, certain I'd heard wrong. "Emma," I said softly, taking a small step forward. "It's me. It's Mom." Her eyes darted to Andrew, then to his mother, who was now standing beside him with crossed arms and a frown. Emma took a step back. "I think there's been a mistake," she said quickly. "Please, could someone show her out?" My throat went dry. The photo frame slipped slightly from my grasp. "Emma," I whispered again, barely able to breathe, "why are you doing this?" Andrew's mother's tone turned sharp. "Ma'am, I think it's best if you leave." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The world blurred as tears filled my eyes. I looked at my daughter one last time, hoping for even a flicker of guilt or love or recognition. But all I saw was embarrassment. As I turned to leave, my hands trembling, the frame fell from my grasp. It hit the marble floor and shattered, glass scattering across the doorway. For a moment, the only sound in the room was that sharp crack of breaking glass. Emma gasped softly, but she didn't move. Andrew's mother sighed, muttering something about these people, and called for the maid to clean it up. I bent down, picked up the broken photograph with shaking hands, and whispered, "Congratulations, sweetheart," before walking away. Outside, the air felt heavier than ever. My legs carried me down the driveway as tears blurred my vision. I reached the street, still clutching the torn picture of a little girl and her father. Two faces frozen in time, smiling at a future that no longer existed. I don't remember how I got home that day. I only remember sitting on the floor of my living room with the broken frame beside me, the shards of glass glinting under the dim light. That was the night I realized something I never wanted to believe. Sometimes, love isn't lost all at once. It dies slowly, one silent rejection at a time, until it finally stops breathing. And that day, mine did. That night, I sat on the cold floor of my living room, the broken glass from the picture frame scattered beside me. My hands were trembling, my throat dry, and my chest felt hollow, as if something inside me had been ripped away. I had imagined so many versions of motherhood, the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, the proud tears at graduations. But I had never imagined this, the day my own child would look me in the eye and pretend she didn't know me. The silence in my home was unbearable. Every corner echoed with memories. Emma's laughter as a child, the soft patter of her little feet running across the floor, her voice calling, "Mom, I'm home." Those echoes now felt like ghosts haunting the walls. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror without feeling a kind of shame I couldn't explain. For days, I moved like a shadow, barely functioning, barely breathing. I kept replaying that moment at her doorstep, trying to understand why. Was she ashamed of me? My job? My old clothes? The wrinkles that years of hard work had carved into my face? Or was it the simple truth that I didn't fit into her new world anymore? A world of bright lights, rich people, and picture-perfect smiles. One morning, I found myself sitting on the couch, holding the same scarf she had given me years ago at Christmas. I pressed it against my chest and whispered, "I did everything for you, Emma. Everything." My voice cracked, and I began to sob, quiet, painful sobs that came from the deepest part of me. It felt like grief, but worse. Because this wasn't death. It was rejection, and rejection leaves you alive to feel every cut. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, something inside me shifted. I looked around my tiny apartment, the same walls that had seen me through every season of my life, and I thought, I can't stay broken forever. I had survived Robert's death. I had built a life from nothing. I had worked nights, fed strangers, healed the sick, and raised a child alone. I wasn't weak. I had just forgotten who I was. That realization didn't come like a sudden burst of light. It came like a quiet whisper, slow and steady, reminding me that pain doesn't have to be the end of a story, it can be the beginning of a new one. So, I decided to start over. I went to the small drawer where I had kept my nursing license and found it buried under old letters and bills. It was dusty, expired, but still mine. Holding it in my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, purpose. I called the medical board the next morning, asked about renewal requirements, and signed up for the refresher courses. Returning to the hospital wasn't easy. My hands shook when I first put the scrubs back on. The smell of antiseptic brought back memories of every tired night and every aching bone. But this time, I wasn't doing it just to survive. I was doing it to live again. Word spread quickly at the hospital. "Helen's back," my old co-workers said with surprise. They hugged me, welcomed me, told me how proud they were. I smiled politely, but deep down I wasn't doing it for pride. I was doing it for healing. A few months later, I started volunteering at a community center, a small space downtown that helped elderly women learn basic care, exercise, and confidence. Many of them were lonely, forgotten by their families, just like me. They reminded me of who I had become, and who I refused to remain. Every Thursday, I'd gather them in a circle and say, "We can't control who loves us, but we can choose how we love ourselves." And every time I said those words, I felt them settle deeper into my own heart. Slowly, people began calling me Mom Helen. Not out of pity, but out of respect. One of the center's directors wrote an article about my work for a local newspaper. The headline read, "A mother who lost her daughter but found her purpose." When I saw that title, I cried, not from sadness but from gratitude. I realized that maybe, after all these years, my story wasn't about losing Emma. Maybe it was about finding Helen. The same woman who had once lived for someone else was now living for herself, and for others who needed love, even if it came from a stranger. One evening, as I locked up the center, a soft breeze brushed against my face. I looked up at the sky, painted in the pinks and purples of sunset, and whispered, "Robert, I'm okay now." For the first time in years, I truly meant it. But peace has a strange way of testing you, because just when I started to believe my heart had healed, life found a way to remind me that the past has its own way of knocking on your door. And when it did, it wasn't through forgiveness or joy. It came in the form of my daughter. It was almost 6 months after that day at the mansion when I heard her name again. It came from a nurse I worked with, a young woman named Carla who loved to gossip while we folded linens in the staff room. "Did you hear about Dr. Miller from Richmond Hospital?" she said one morning, her voice low but eager. "Apparently, she's on leave. Something about a breakdown after her husband left." I froze. The world seemed to quiet around me. "Emma Miller?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Carla nodded. "Yeah. Beautiful woman, blonde hair, early 30s. Her husband, Andrew Miller, big-shot cardiologist? I guess he's been seeing someone else. Left her for one of the nurses. It's been all over the medical boards." I just stood there, gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. I didn't say a word. I didn't ask for details. But inside me, every emotion I'd buried came rushing back. Not anger, not satisfaction, just a dull, painful ache. The kind that comes when you realize the person who hurt you is finally tasting their own emptiness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring out into the rain. The same rain that had fallen the day Robert died. The same rain that had soaked me when I walked away from Emma's doorstep. Only this time, it felt quieter, almost sorrowful, like the sky was grieving with me. I tried to imagine her life now. The fancy house, the expensive clothes, the perfect husband, all fading like smoke. I pictured her walking through those empty rooms, hearing the silence she had once left me in. Maybe she finally knew what it felt like to be invisible. A few days later, I received a letter at the community center. The envelope was plain, the handwriting shaky, but I recognized it instantly. It was from Emma. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't deserve to ask, but I need to tell you the truth. I married Andrew because I thought he was my escape. I thought I was building a life that would make you proud. But I lost myself trying to impress people who never cared about me. He left. I have nothing now. No house, no job, no one. I keep thinking about that day, the day you came to my door. I wish I could go back, Mom. I wish I had hugged you instead of hurting you. If you can ever find it in your heart to see me again, I'll be waiting. Emma." I read the letter 3 times. My hands trembled as I folded it back into the envelope. My heart wanted to run to her, to hold her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But my mind whispered the truth. She had already broken something that could never be fixed. Still, I prayed for her. Every night, I whispered her name in the dark. Not out of hope for reunion, but out of a mother's instinct that never dies, even when love has been shattered. 2 weeks later, while closing up the community center, I heard the sound of someone calling my name. A voice I hadn't heard in months. "Mom." I turned slowly. She was standing there, soaked from the rain, hair clinging to her face, eyes swollen and red. Her makeup had washed away, and her clothes looked worn, almost unfamiliar. She wasn't the glamorous doctor anymore. She was just my daughter. Broken. "Mom," she sobbed. "Please. Please don't turn me away. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't live like this anymore. I lost everything. My job, my husband, my home. I only have you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as 100 memories flashed before my eyes. Her laughter as a child, her first steps, her promise to buy me a big house one day. Then that moment at her wedding door, her cold eyes, her words, "I don't know her." The rain poured harder outside. I could smell the damp air seeping in through the door. "Mom, please," she whispered again, taking a step closer. I was blind. I thought success meant leaving everything behind. I thought I could build a new world without you. But it all fell apart, and now I realize I had everything when I had you. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart ached for her, but my soul remembered the pain too well. She reached out to touch my hand. "Just one more chance," she begged. "Please, Mom. Just one." For a long time, I said nothing. The only sound was the rain, heavy and relentless, just like my memories. And then, finally, I spoke. "Do you remember what you said to me that day, Emma?" I asked softly. "When your husband asked who I was?" She froze, her face crumbling. "Mom, you said, I don't know her." My voice broke, but I kept going. "That was the day I died, Emma. You buried me with those words. You didn't just shut me out of your home, you shut me out of your heart." She began to cry harder, but I didn't reach for her. I couldn't. I stepped closer to the door, holding it open. The cold air rushed in. "I loved you with everything I had," I said quietly. "And when you turned me away, I learned something, that love without respect is just pain." She stood there, shaking, her eyes pleading. "Please, Mom." I took a deep breath, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Go home, Emma. Wherever that is now." She didn't move for a long time. Then, slowly, she turned and walked into the rain. I closed the door behind her, gently, not in anger but in finality. And for the first time in years, I felt the silence fill my home not with loneliness, but with peace. That night, after Emma left, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the rain blur the world outside. The sound of it against the glass reminded me of every night I had sat there waiting for her calls, every storm I had weathered alone while she built a life that didn't include me. I thought I'd feel relief after turning her away. Instead, I felt a strange calm, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for something that's already gone. The next morning, I found her letter still lying on my kitchen table, damp from where a raindrop, or maybe a tear, had landed on it. I read it again, slower this time, and realized she wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was asking for something deeper, for me to forget. But mothers don't forget. They remember everything, even the pain. Especially the pain. For the next few days, she kept coming. I didn't open the door. I'd hear her knock softly, then louder, calling, "Mom, please. It's me." But I'd stay silent. Not out of hatred, but because I had already spoken my last truth. Then one evening, I came home from the community center to find her sitting on the front steps. Her hair was damp again from the drizzle, her coat soaked through. She looked smaller, younger, like the child I had once held after nightmares. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. "Mom, I just wanted to see you," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't even have to say anything. I just need to know you're okay." I stared at her for a moment. My heart wanted to run to her, to hold her like before, to tell her it was all going to be fine. But my mind reminded me of the years I had begged for her attention, the silence I had endured, the humiliation I had swallowed. So instead, I walked past her and unlocked the door. She followed me to the doorway, hesitating. "Can I come in?" she asked. I turned to face her. "Emma," I said quietly, "you came into this world through my pain. You grew up in my arms. I gave you everything I could, even when I had nothing left to give. But somewhere along the way, you forgot who you were and who I was." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, Mom. I know, and I hate myself for it." I shook my head gently. "Hating yourself won't fix anything. Some things in life break, and they never go back to what they were." Her lips trembled. "But can't we start over? Please. I'll do anything." I stepped closer, my voice soft but firm. "Do you remember what I told you when you were little? When you broke that vase your father loved?" She sniffed. "You said that some things can be glued back together, but the cracks will always show." I nodded. "And that's what we are now. Cracked. Not because I don't love you, but because you chose to break us." She shook her head. "I was stupid. I cared too much about what other people thought. I didn't want them to know where I came from, that you worked nights in a nursing home, that we weren't rich. I was ashamed. But now, I'd give anything to go back." Her words stabbed at me, but I didn't cry. My tears had run dry long ago. "You were never supposed to be ashamed of me, Emma," I said quietly. "You were supposed to be proud. I wore my scars so you wouldn't have to earn yours." She dropped to her knees, clutching my hand. "Mom, please. I can't do this without you. I looked down at her, this grown woman who once was my baby, and all I could feel was the weight of everything I had carried for her. The love, the loss, the disappointment, and the quiet strength that had kept me alive. I knelt slightly, took her hand, and said, "You can. You're stronger than you think. But strength doesn't mean going back. It means learning to walk forward, even when the door behind you is closed." Her tears fell onto my hand. "So, this is goodbye?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Emma. This is peace." She stared at me, her lips trembling. Then she whispered, "I love you, Mom." I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carries both forgiveness and finality. "I know," I said softly. "But love isn't always enough." I stood, turned, and stepped inside. She stayed kneeling there as I closed the door between us. Not in anger, not in punishment, but because some wounds heal only when you stop reopening them. For a long moment, I leaned against the door, listening to her sobs fade into the rain. And when silence finally came, it wasn't the silence of loss anymore. It was the silence of peace, the kind that fills a heart that has learned how to let go. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally stopped waiting for the day my daughter would come back and make it right. Sometimes closure doesn't come from the people who hurt us. Sometimes it comes from the strength it takes to walk away with dignity still intact. And as I drifted to sleep, I whispered to the quiet, "I forgive you, Emma. But I'm keeping the distance that peace requires." It's been a year since that night, the night I closed the door and chose peace over pain. My life has changed in quiet, beautiful ways since then. I still live in the same small house in Virginia, but it doesn't feel empty anymore. The silence that once haunted me has become my companion. A reminder that peace doesn't come from who stays in your life, but from who you choose to be when they leave. Every morning, I open the curtains and let the light in. I make a cup of coffee, sit by the window, and watch the world wake up. Sometimes I see mothers walking their children to school and it makes me smile, not out of envy, but gratitude. I had my time. I loved deeply. And even though my love was not returned the way I hoped, it shaped me into who I am. The community center has become my second home. I expanded it last spring. Now we have painting classes, therapy circles, and even a healing garden where women come to talk, cry, and laugh again. They call me Miss Helen now, and sometimes Mom. I never correct them. I've learned that motherhood isn't only about giving birth. It's about giving care, compassion, and courage, even to strangers. Every week, new faces appear. Women who've been abandoned, widows who've been forgotten, mothers whose children no longer call. When they tell their stories, I see reflections of my own heartbreak in their eyes. And when I tell them mine, they listen the way I once wished my daughter had, not with pity, but with understanding. One evening after class, a young woman stayed behind. She reminded me of Emma, bright, ambitious, but lost. She said, "Miss Helen, how did you forgive the people who hurt you so deeply?" I smiled softly and told her, "Forgiveness isn't for them, darling. It's for you. When you carry anger, you give them a home inside your heart. But when you forgive, you finally make room for yourself." She cried and I hugged her, the same way I would have hugged Emma if she'd ever come back. Sometimes I still think about her. I wonder where she is, if she's happy, if she ever found her way again. But I don't wait anymore. I don't look at the door expecting her to walk through it. I've learned that some chapters close not with anger, but with acceptance. Last Christmas, I received a small envelope with no return address. Inside was a card, simple white, with just 3 words written inside. "Thank you, Mom." There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting instantly. I held that card for a long time, tears filling my eyes, not from sadness, but from peace. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was acknowledgement, the kind I had stopped hoping for. I placed the card inside a drawer beside Robert's picture and whispered, "She's learning." Then I smiled, because so was I. As I sit here tonight, pen in hand, writing these words for whoever might need them, I finally understand something I didn't before. Motherhood isn't a contract of gratitude. It's a gift freely given, even when it's not returned. And forgiveness doesn't mean reopening doors. It means standing by the window, watching the rain fall, and realizing that you can love someone and still let them go. So, if anyone ever tells you that love always comes back, tell them this: sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it leaves, but what it leaves behind is strength. And that's enough.